Yeah, this is my first Zoom call.
This is like only the second one that I've done myself. So I'm still like really new at the whole Zoom.
Yeah, yeah, I'm always about 10 years behind on technology, so this is a big deal for me.
It's so awesome though, like to have this. I mean, if we're going to have some sort of global pandemic where we can't see each other, I guess it's good we have technology. So,
Yeah, that's one company that's doing well during all this.
for sure, for sure. My favorite, I saw like a meme, and like memes are just life right now. And
Yeah.
there's one I saw, it was like the old Scooby-Doo cartoon, and they're like unmasking the villain, and they're like, who's behind COVID-19, and they pull the mask off and it's Zoom because
Oh yeah, of
nobody was
course.
using it before this. So
Right.
it's like now it's like, oh, the stock goes way up now.
Sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah. So how are you?
I'm doing good. Just worn out. Just finished school for the day for the kids,
Yeah.
so they're
Yeah.
doing good. But just starting to get used to it. I doubt we're going back to school this year.
Yeah.
They said May 15th, but
Yeah, they pretty much announced that they were done here in New York. They didn't like actually say it, but they said that how long the marking period was going to do, and they're just doing e-learning still. So
yeah. Are you in New York City?
I'm actually outside Buffalo,
Oh, okay.
so Western New York, but still New York State. Still a shit show here. So
Still, totally, yeah, I'm sure.
bad,
Yeah.
it's bad, and nobody really is like on the same page, which is frustrating. So
What do you mean? Like how so?
Well, first of all, like with the schools, like our school is just now like going to start doing e-learning, but I know like
Yeah.
other school districts have been doing it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the state as a whole approaches like next year. Like, are you just going to pass everybody? Are you going to have to redo it? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. My twins are a little young. They missed the cutoff date by like 3 weeks to be held back. And we just went ahead and pushed them ahead because they were doing so well. But now I'm starting to worry about that. But with this thing, it's kind of slowed everybody down.
mhm,
So it's almost like they're with everyone now. And I'm making
mhm.
them do, they have extra work they can do. And so I'm making them do the extra work too, so they can kind of catch up and be with their classmates. So that's one good thing that came out of this, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's good that you're seeing it like that and you're taking that time to, help them and catch up. And
Yeah.
my daughter's 9, so they just basically sent home like a review packet for her. So she's keeping her skills up, but she's been baking and making clothes and like doing all these other things. So it's cool for her
Yeah.
to learn new skills and do new things that maybe she wouldn't be doing in school. So
Yeah, definitely.
an
And I've
advantage
cleaned
too,
every room in my house about 15 times, so
for sure. For sure. Going through old stuff and
yeah,
finding old
totally.
random things and
Yeah, putting stuff in bags to take to Goodwill.
for sure. Sure. Early spring cleaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm super excited to chat with you. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess we'll just kind of start with the beginning of your life. You said you were born in New York City, raised in Atlanta. Talk about your family growing up.
Yeah, I had a pretty interesting childhood. Like I said, I was born in New York City, and when I was really little, moved to Atlanta, which the only reason we were in New York City is because my dad got a job promotion. I have some family from the upstate, but for the most part, my family's from Atlanta or Charlotte, around that area. So it was pretty cool to be up there and to say that, that I was born in New York City, and everyone else in my family was born in the South, Alabama and Georgia. And so, and we settled in Atlanta, and I had a couple of tragedies when I was little. My mom died right around Christmas when I was in 5th grade.
Oh,
And
that's awful.
yeah, my parents had split up a couple of years before that, or about a year before that, and my dad remarried. Is still married to my stepmother. They've been married 35 years. I have an amazing stepsister and stepbrother that are older. So a new family was kind of put together. And my little brother Phil, he was a couple of years younger than me. He also passed away when I was in college. So, um, but other than that, honestly, I had a really good childhood. Other than those two big, huge things,
Yeah.
I tried not to let those things. I mean, I guess I would have every excuse in the world to check out, or to say, hey, I don't want to deal with life or whatever. But I kind of was motivated to do the opposite of that because I think everybody expected me to just kind of need help along the way, and or everybody was always worried about me, how I was going to handle everything. And of course, it was hard, but I just, especially when my brother died and when I was in college, my life was going so well that I just couldn't. It happened about 3 or 4 weeks before I graduated, so I pulled it all together and was able to walk across that stage. And they were tough. Both of the deaths, my mom and my brother, both of them were suicides. So that added a whole new element to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the result is that, like, I appreciate the small things are the big things. That's what I try to tell people. Like, things can change in a second. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow. And so I've learned to appreciate small things, whether it's just a joke or a laugh or a moment or whatever, and turn those into big, important, special things. And that's kind of how I've kind of approached my life. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to be too, and you have to. You just can't live and dwell on the sad things in life. You can't.
Yeah, and without music, I honestly don't know what. But I'm the worst athlete in the history of the United States, if not the world. So, I mean, I remember one basketball season, my dad was like, "You don't have to go." It was like the third or fourth game. He's like, you really just don't have to go. Like, I would get the ball, and the rest of the team would go, "Don't shoot, whatever you do." But I started playing. I played trumpet for a couple years, and then I started playing drums in the 8th grade. And just the whole point was to get a band together to play a song in the talent show. And it was going to be Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin. So the first thing I ever learned was that little intro to that song, but it ended up being Purple Haze. And I didn't even know how to use the bass pedal, so I just did it without the bass pedal. But by the time the talent show came around, I learned how to play. And so that was kind of my escape, my thing, my passion from then on out. So
nice. Did you guys win the talent show?
No, we lost to a Japanese violin player, and then a group of chorale singers, but we did get 3rd place.
There you
so
go.
We got a small trophy. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what made you, like, was it just not being good in sports that made you gravitate to music, or were you like always into music?
I mean, I was always into it. I started listening to Iron Maiden in the 3rd grade, and still probably my favorite band. I mean, it was in the mid-'80s, and heavy metal was, the way I explain it to some of my younger friends, is like, and not necessarily the glam metal stuff like Poison and Bon Jovi. I couldn't stand any of that stuff. Like Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and Dio and groups like that. That was kind of like the Phish and the Dead of those days for teenagers and for, kids with long hair. That was, Touch of Grey had not hit yet, so the Dead was still an underground thing, and Phish was just in college, just starting, so nobody knew who they were. But that was their thing, and like, if you talk to a lot of people my age, a lot of them went through that first, and so, but it just, it was a total and complete escape, and I liked it because it was scary, and I liked the imagery, and the music was really, really complex and technical, and a lot of Umphrey McGee music sounds like that, honestly. And so, and then when I began to play music, and bands always needed drummers, so that I was always the youngest guy in the band, and so I was able to get in some really good bands in high school. And just the whole thing about, it's not just a band, it's a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. Like, I had the jackets and the posters and the tapes and stuff. And I discovered the Grateful Dead around the 9th grade, which is the reason I'm sitting here talking to you now, I think. I think all of that started that whole different universe of music and culture began around then too.
So what made you, like, when did you find out about the Grateful Dead? Did somebody say, hey, you need to listen to this, or like who introduced
Um,
you?
well, Touch of Grey came on the radio when I was like 12. That was the
Okay.
big hit single. And I thought, and I heard it, and it was catchy and stuff, but I thought it was like Crosby, Stills, and Nash or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the video and their skeletons, and I was like curious. I was like, there's some depth here that I don't know. Like something's here that's weird, that is intriguing, that I don't know about. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason why it should look like a heavy metal video, and the name of the band sounds like a heavy metal band, but they're playing this like dad rock stuff. Like, what is that? And I really liked the single, so I bought the cassette single. It was like um, Touch of Grey, and then My Brother Esau on the other side. And then so I got In the Dark when it came out, and I liked it, but it was really the imagery contrasting to the style of music is really what intrigued me. But then I bought like Go to Heaven, and I was like, this is too weird. So I stopped listening to them. And then what happened was my friend Ricky Cohen in the ninth grade found out how to steal cable, and so we were over at his house, and he would steal all the pay-per-views, and the Dead would do these kind of like a precursor to a webcast. They would do these. You'd pay $30 to your cable company or $25, whatever it was back then, and they would play a full concert live and you could watch it on pay-per-view like you would at a boxing match or something like that. That's why there's so many professional Dead videos from the late 80s and early 90s. It's because they would do these pay-per-views. And so we watched one. It was Summer Solstice 89, 6/21/89, and it was the exact opposite of absolutely everything that I knew about the kind of bands that I listened to. There was no intro. There was no explosion and a guy leaping out over the amp and grabbing the microphone. They walked out. They took like 15 minutes to tune up. Jerry was smoking cigarettes. Bob was kicking his amplifier. The roadie was walking around, and I was like, what is this? And they just slowly, it just built and built and built. And then by the time the sun started to come down, they would jam. And then it was just like, it just built to this peak. And then during the set break, they went out, they took the cameras out in the lobby so you could see the whole lot scene and all of that. And then of course the second set happened, and I was like a different person after that. And then so we watched it again because it was on a weekend, so we sat there for 8 hours. And the second time I taped it, and like on VHS tape, and then I took the tape home and I put my little cassette recorder in front of it and I recorded the music and I memorized every note. And then from there, and when my parents started letting me go to concerts again, like the Dead was off limits, like,
Yeah.
because they knew better.
Yeah.
So finally, by like 91, 92, I finally got to see them. I saw them the same month I saw Phish, which is March 92. And but by the time I saw the Dead, I knew everything. And then I started going on little blocks of tours and stuff like that.
When was your first Dead show?
3/1/92 at the Omni in Atlanta. It was all right. Bruce Hornsby was there. And I saw some really good ones. By the end of 1993, though, it was not good, but when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, it's epic no matter what.
Right.
Listening back, it's like, ugh. But also, there's some great moments too. So
do you have a favorite show out of the run that you did? You said you saw like 22 shows before Jerry passed. So
I was lucky to see him at like Deer Creek and Freedom Hall, and I saw him at Madison Square Garden, and Bob Dylan came out. I think the Soldier Field run in '93, Sting opened. Mm-hmm. Jerry came out and played Tea in the Sahara, and and the first night they just did this huge. It was raining, and they did I think it was Box of Rain to open or something like that. But they did a Playing in the Band Uncle John's with a big, huge Space Jam in the middle, and I just remember the imagery of the lightning and the silhouettes of the fans, and the band just taking it out to Type 2 territory, and that didn't happen often then at that point. But they were really tight in 1993, so that was definitely a good memory. That was my high school graduation present. As me and some friends went on a 6-show run that week, which was Louisville, Chicago, and then Deer Creek. I was 18, so wide-eyed and just
Oh
totally
yeah,
blown away by it.
I bet. I bet. That's cool. So you started seeing Phish in early 92, you said, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so I mentioned in your intro for this episode that you wrote the Farmers Almanac, volume 6, I believe it
Yeah.
is. So talk about from first seeing them in 1992 to having a book published in like 2000. Kind of take us on that timeline.
Yeah, well, the 1992 show, unfortunately, was just a footnote because I stopped. I didn't catch it. I was not hooked, as they say. And the reason was they played the Variety Playhouse in Atlanta, and they were tight. They were really tight, and I was up front, and I remember some of the songs, Big David Bowie, and some other kind of rare songs that they did, Lullaby of Birdland, things like that. And I was with a friend that was telling me everything that was going on. But you have to understand back then, their lyrics, yeah, when you go from Robert Hunter to Tom Marshall, I appreciate it now so much. You have to really like the meaning's in there. You just got to dig for it. Whereas the Dead, if they just lay it on out, like this song's about death, or playing cards or whatever. And so at the end, and Phish had not found that depth in their songwriting that they later found, and so I that turned me off a little bit. But so what happened was after the first set, it was raining outside, and water flooded the inside of the venue and flooded the stage, and they canceled the second set. Had I seen that second set, I probably would have kept going. But they walked out in a puddle of water, and they did 4 a cappella songs and called it, and walked into the audience and talked to the crowd, and that was it. And they said, we promise next time we come back, we're going to blow the roof off. And so they came back and did a 3-night run at the Roxy, which is a very famous run. Phish at the Roxy, it's a box set. It was actually on my birthday. But by then, I didn't even care. Because I'm glad that I spent my time seeing the Dead, as kind of lackluster as those shows were, because Jerry died. But by 1994, like I couldn't deny it anymore. Like I could not hide from their awesomeness. Like, all of my friends were telling me I have to see them and this and that. And I went to go see a friend in Kentucky, a girlfriend at the time in Kentucky, and I had a copy of Junta in the car, and the sun was setting over the mountains, and it was my roommate's tape. I never really listened to it. I'd heard him play it a little, so I popped it in and listened to like Divided Sky and You Enjoy Myself, all for the first time, and was just mesmerized. And it hasn't stopped since. So I spent the summer of 95 in Washington, D.C., and I saw my first show as like a real fan in the summer of 95 in Virginia in Gainesville, 6/17/95. Dave Matthews came out and did a Bob Marley song. But then the very next week, I saw my last Dead shows. And it was unreal because like Phish just felt like more my generation. Everything was more, the music was more intense. The crowd was crazier. The guitar solos were crazier. Like everything was just more, coming from a heavy metal background, much more my style than, I love all the Dead's old folk songs, but I didn't grow up in the 60s. I didn't go see Arlo Guthrie like Rob Turner did. And so, so there was always that disconnect there. But to see Phish peaking and then see the Dead falling all within a week, like even if Jerry had not died, I had made my choice. I knew that I was going to start following Phish from there. So it was great because I was able to see the Clifford Ball and all these amazing, I saw many, many, many shows in the late 90s. And then when Andy Bernstein, who created the Farmers Almanac with Larry Chasnoff and Brian Celentano and Lockhart Steele, they were throwing in the towel with the Almanac to move on to something else, and they put out ads to do it, for looking for people to do it. And I was just at a point in my life where I could do it. I was like 24, 25. And I don't know if we were the most experienced people to do it, but we just kept bothering him about it. And he's like, all right, you guys want it, then you can take it. And it took me and a couple of my friends that helped me about a year. And it was, I'll never do it again, just to answer that question. A lot of people ask me that. It took over my life. We self-published, self-printed. We wrote it on dial-up. You know, we
Wow.
would go to Kinko's, which is FedEx office now, you know, after the show and write up the tour extra, which is, you know, we would hand out these newsletters to show everybody what they played the night before because nobody had cell phones or anything like that. And it just took over my life. Like I almost lost my job, and any money we made, we put back into the book or back into seeing shows because we had to see shows. You know, we absolutely had to see a certain number of shows. Then when they announced the hiatus, we had to keep going because we didn't want it to be out of date. So we waited even longer. So finally it came out in Christmas of 2000. And it's the biggest one. It's 500 something pages. We sold out 10,000 copies right away. And then so we did another print run and refined it a little bit and fixed some errors and put out another 2,500 and decided not to do a third print run. But it's unbelievable how many people still talk about it or remember it or whatever. And they hear who I am or they see me, they give me gifts, you know, like jewelry and stuff like that. Like it's been 19 years and I still hear about it, and that I didn't expect, and that's really, really cool that legacy is still going on.
That is really cool. And I think it's pretty cool that you wrote a book. It's one of my goals in life. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was it was not easy, but and it wasn't just writing, you know, too. It was compiling and fixing data and all this. It was tough. But obviously it's something I wouldn't have changed. I'm really proud of it.
It's very cool. All right, so let's change it over to talking about some Umphrey's McGee. You told me about your first show, March 2nd, 2002, at the Variety Playhouse, I believe. So talk about Vince sending you a CD. You said it was to do promotion along with the book. So talk about why he sent that to you and your first reaction when you listened to it.
Yeah, we were doing a promotion of some sort. We did several promotions throughout 2001. We did a show at the Stone Pony with Amphibian, Tom Marshall's band, and I hosted that show. And we did one down here in Atlanta where I put a group together and we played some music at a place called the Brandy House. And I think that was the thing that we were doing. We were doing some sort of trivia giveaway or something with the book. And there's a section in the book called From the Bottom. And it was the bands, the sub-genre bands that you know were influenced by Phish, like the Disco Biscuits and I don't know if you remember names like Uncle Sammy and you know, groups like that. And Umphrey's was they weren't in there. They hadn't been around very long. You know, they'd only been around about 2 years. But I kept getting music in, and so some of those bands that didn't make it in the book, we gave away merchandise as part of the promotion that we were doing. I can't remember exactly what the promotion was. So Vince sent me a packet. I didn't ask for it. He just sent it to me. I didn't know him. I'd never heard of them because being in the South, they hadn't even played down here. And so they sent me the newest album, which was One Fat Sucker, which it wasn't a good album. I still don't think it's a good album. It doesn't represent the band at all, honestly. And I guess that's why it's discontinued. It's like, I was telling my friend, One Fat Sucker is the 3 most boring words since gluten-free cracker. You put it in and it's like, most of it's instrumental. There's 2 songs with a didgeridoo solo from Dr. Didge. It was great, but it was just a very unfocused album. However, I could tell that they were really good. I could hear, because All Things Ninja's on there, so I could hear that they were really good. I mean, Jake had just been in the band like a month or 2. He's not even on all the tracks, and the ones that he's on, he's reserved big time, you know. And it's funny because the summer of 2000, the fall of 2000 are amazing tours. It's almost like the worst songs were picked for this live album. But for some reason I could tell that they were good. And so fast forward to my first show, March of 2002, we were moving from one end of the neighborhood or the town, Decatur, which is the town in Atlanta that it took place, from one end to the other. And moving is, of course, the worst thing ever. and if everyone fights when they move. So we were moving, and we knew that they were in town, and we had no plans to go. And because I wasn't really turned on by that album. So we're moving from one end to the other part of town. In the middle of town is a record store, and they're doing an in-store performance. And it's actually on YouTube. Like Miro sings No Ordinary Love, and like killing myself for missing it. But we would see the van. We saw the van in the trailer parked outside. You know, we're like, oh, that's those Umphrey McGee guys. And finally, like, we've been moving all day long, and like we were just exhausted and arguing with each other, and like the final straw was putting the bed together, and like we like put the headboard on, and the thing just came crashing down. It was just like we got to get out of here. Let's go see that band. All right, they sound like they would be pretty good. They're talented. Let's just go see them. So we went down there, and we saw a few of our other friends. Rob Perner was there. Scott Nicholson, Bushler, he was there. Like all the, everybody had heard of them, at this point. And like within the first 30 seconds, I was blown away. They opened with KaBump, and just watching Jake, I thought he was the leader. I didn't, to find out he was not even an original member, wasn't even in the band for a few years, like blew me away. And they did it. They threw it all at you, like everything. A lot of great covers, a lot of great originals. The first Jimmy Stewart's, or one of the first Jimmy Stewart's. It's actually, I was showing my girlfriend the Reel to Reel documentary the other day, and they show parts of my first show in there when they talk about how Jimmy Stewart was started. Hardly anybody was there. I remember Stacey sitting at the doorway, meeting people as they left. But we were so blown away, and we were huddled, me and my friends, and we were like, what do we do about this? Like, why is no one here? We have to like tell the freaking world about these people. How are they this good and there's 50 people here? This makes no sense. Like, what can we do? And we all had like some clout within the music scene there, and ways to spread the word and stuff like that. So we met the guys, and they were our age. They were a lot like us, listened to the same kind of music, had the same sense of humor. So we hooked up with them, and we started to kind of promote, like do a street team deal at other shows. Like I remember when Mo was playing the Tabernacle, we walked up and down the line waiting to get in with Umphrey McGee posters and, handing out CDs. Pretty brazen, I guess, back then, but we really were. We believed in the music so much that we just really wanted it. The planets were not aligning right if this band wasn't big within the scene. And at that point, we just wanted to do whatever we could to get people in our part of the country to listen to it. And so I remember the first online, when the board came out, the first the online message board that I guess is still around. Everybody on there was from the Midwest, and suddenly, like, this infiltration of people from the Southeast, started coming on, and everybody was like, who are these people? Like, who are you guys? Why don't we know who you are? And my friend Mike Dolan christened us the Some Freaks, the Southern Umphreys. And so that kind of built this whole little image of this fan base in the Southeast. And they just kept, every time they would come back, I mean, it's just, you can do this with any town in the United States, just watch the growth of venues that they start at, and then, they move to a theater, and then they move to a gym, and then they move to, and then it's the Tabernacle for 5 minutes. It was pretty amazing. My second show was the first Bonnaroo, and to see them in front of, that was a major moment in their career. Major. Man, I was so excited everybody got to see them, and they killed it, and it's just been, I wouldn't keep going if they weren't good. I mean, I don't have time for this. I mean, I'm 45 years old and I've got 3 kids, but they are so amazing and continue to blow my mind that I continue to go 18 years later.
Same. I feel the exact same. So 2003, the band crashes at your house after their show at the Orange Peel. So share like 1 or 2 stories of.
Yeah, that was funny. They just, they would rather do that than pay for a hotel room, because our house was only probably like 5 minutes from the Orange Peel. And but there were some curvy roads. I remember the trailer kind of going back and forth a little bit. And yeah, it was fun. We stayed up all night, and I remember Brendan and Jake going through the Beatles books that were at the house, and some other stuff. And we just stayed up all night hanging out, and it was cool because we're all really close friends, and they've been really, really good friends, over the years. And you really feel like they're one of, they're part of your group of friends or generation or whatever. It's great to see somebody from, like exactly your age pretty much, and into all the same things, make it, because all of us musicians that didn't make it, um, we rally around behind them. So it was always a lot of fun. One story I remember from Birmingham, Alabama. We went to go see them, and we stayed at the Motel 6, and it's just this rundown hotel. And I remember we walked out onto the balcony, and I remember thinking, I wonder where the band is staying tonight. I wonder what hotel they got, because we're here at the Motel 6. And the door opens, and out comes Bayless next door. They were staying they were staying right next door. We had no idea. We're like, what are you doing here? And so he came in our room. We watched Cheers and like hung out, and then went to the show. And then the very next year, somehow we got or it was maybe later in the year. Yeah, it was later in the year, fall of '03. We got this exact same hotel rooms, just coincidentally, at the Motel 6. That was really, really funny. But yeah, those were good fun days. They didn't sleep much at all, and they were, partying a lot. And I mean, we all were. You can when you're 27, 28 years old. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you moved to Asheville in 2004. What made you decide to move?
I wanted to. Well, I'd had enough of my corporate job. Think office space. I'd had enough. And I went to college around this area, so I wanted to get back, to the mountains and open. I decided to open a music store. At the time, music stores were closing down, but Asheville is a much different place than most other places, and those kind of things thrive here, and still do, actually. So I decided to open up a music store just to. At the time, I thought it was my dream. But once you get it all set up, you're like working at a retail store is what it's like,
Mm-hmm.
But it was really cool. We would have indoor concerts, like we would have groups come and perform acoustic shows to promote their concerts there. So we had a lot of really good groups: Richie Havens, Fishbone, Arrested Development, North Mississippi All Stars, and Umphrey's played right after Anchor Drops came out. They played a show in the store. So that went on for a couple of years, and then the iPod came out, and I saw the writing on the wall, and closed down and saved, whatever money I had left before I lost everything. So, and but I've been up here ever since, and I run a trivia karaoke DJ company with my friend from childhood. We've been doing it for over 10 years now. So, but even though there was a lot of headaches from that store, there was a lot of really exciting and fun times back then too.
Well, what was the name of your record store?
It was called Good Music and Other Stuff.
Nice. I like
And
it.
on the Live Music Archive, I think the show is actually on its 12204 early show. Is
Okay.
the acoustic set.
Cool.
It's funny. You can tell them. You can hear them telling Chris not to play so hard. And at one point, Brendan says, "Joel, could you please get a more masculine sound out of that keyboard?" Just really good. A bunch of shenanigans. It was a fun day.
Yeah, I bet. So how do you meet Carl Engelmann?
Well, I knew about Carl by this point. I was obviously a huge fan. I knew about Ali Baba's Tahini, and Jake and I were really close, and still are, and always have been. He's one of my closest friends. And so when he told me that when Ali Baba's Tahini broke up, it's because Carl left to move to North Carolina for a girl, which Jake was really mad at the time, but it's the best thing that ever happened because he joined Umphrey because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was, he moved to the mountains of North Carolina. So I found out he was here, and he didn't know who I was, but I knew who he was. So Jake put us in touch, and I said, "Look, man, I play drums, and I wanna play music with you. I've got a guitar player, Tommy Dennison, who's just a fabulous guitar player, and he sat in with Umphrey's and went head to head with those guys and held his own. He's just an incredible guitar player. They call him the North Carolina Shredder here in Western North Carolina. So we went down there, and at the time he was putting together Bright Lights, Big City, and Partying Peeps to give to the band. Like he's always sending Bayless songs. And so the first session we ever did was we did a Bright Lights Big City, but it was a kind of a darker version called Bright Lights Getting Dirty. And the lyrics were a little dirtier. But we hit it off right away, and we're like, let's do this. And we formed a band called Mother Vinegar, and with Jeff Hinkle on bass that completed the lineup. And Carl is one of the greatest songwriters I've ever heard. He's just an incredible songwriter, and the guys in Umphrey's will say that too. And he's a genius. He does not care about people hearing his music, about making money. He hates all of that stuff. He hates all of that. He just wants to write some good music and record it. And I have a lot of respect for that, but it's real hard to run a band that way too. I love to play live, and he's such an incredible live performer. He doesn't really want to play live. So it wasn't, I guess it wasn't meant to last, but we did have 2 or 3 really, really good years. And we had as a drummer who doesn't write music, to have a guy that always has material ready is amazing, and combined with Tommy and I's metal background, we were able to create our own sound. And so we had about 65 or 70 originals just in like a 3-year period. We didn't do any covers, but we would redo old Alibaba's Tahini songs, and we would write our own versions of Alibaba's Tahini songs that Umphrey's also would do too. So that was really cool to do. And then we started opening for Umphrey's in 2005. For about 3 years, there were some shows where we opened up for them. So we did our version of Syncopated Strangers, and we had Joel and Andy come on and play with us, because those are the last 2 people you would think would come in for a sit-in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants the guitar players. Well, we're going to bring Joel and Andy up, and they came out and played with us. And we played a show in Chicago, which was actually the worst show we ever played was in Chicago. We had I was so excited because all of my Umphrey's friends were going to come out and see us, and the band was not on tour at that time. So we did a little Midwest tour, and we played in Indianapolis, and we played the Mishawaka Brewing Company, and then we played the Kinetic Playground in Chicago, and a comedian was the opening act.
Mm-hmm.
And he just ripped us to pieces.
Oh.
And that psyched me out. That psyched us out.
Yeah.
And not only that, but all of Umphrey's McGee was sitting in the VIP area in a big circular booth, just staring us down. And it was just imagine playing, whether they're our buddies or not, they're still my musical heroes, Mm-hmm. And it was tough though. That was a tough show. But of course, when you play a bad show, most people don't think it's bad. They're like, what are you talking about? We had a good time. But it was cool as Jake got to come out and play with us and play some Mother Vinegar songs that eventually became Alibaba's Tahini songs. And he played KaBump with us, and Joel came out on guitar. So that was cool and added some fun to it. And in 2007, we were about to make our second album, and Carl decided that was it. I had been warned that was going to happen.
Yeah.
By Jake. He was just count every show as, a blessing, because it could be your last. And that was the end of that. And but we were just about to record our second album, and the material was just like, we were really, really proud of the material. It was very progressive, very cutting edge, very new. And that was in 2007. About a year ago, we all got back together and went in Carl's studio and recorded all of these songs. And so we've got a new album coming out.
That's
It'll
awesome.
be the first Mother Vinegar album in 13 years. And it's almost done. It's been recorded completely, but it's almost done. And we're super, super proud of it. I tried to get Carl to play some shows, and we actually announced a show. And then at the 11th hour, he said he didn't want to do it. He was too busy or whatever. And, shame on me for thinking that that was going to happen anyway. But at the end of the day, we do have a new album coming out with a bunch of material that we've been wanting people to hear for over a decade. So that's pretty exciting.
That is very exciting. I'm excited to hear it. I am all about the community, the Umphrey community. It's like the basis of my show, is kind of highlighting all the different people and all the different stories that people have to share about the community and how Umphrey's has helped them in their lives. So why don't you share a moment in your life where Umphrey's personally, were there for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot, but the last year was a pretty tough year for me. I went through a divorce after 20 years, and all of us were close friends, so it was really hard. And having gone through what I went through as a kid with the deaths of my brother and mother, these feelings of loss and things like that, your fear of loss is just always there. I always think people are either going to leave or they're going to die or whatever. And so to have risen from the ashes of all of that to build this great family and then have it fall apart was more devastating to me than I think it would be maybe others. I don't know. I can't really speak for anyone else, but it was a pretty traumatic time. And right around the middle of that, Umphrey's played in Nashville. And I wasn't going to go. I wasn't in the mood to go. And then I got talked into going, and they were just so gracious. They took me out to lunch. Jake and Robbie and I went out to lunch and talked about everything, and just they were just really, really supportive. And Brendan, especially, one night after the show, because when he was going through something similar a long time ago around the the Safety in Numbers album, we would stay up and talk about what was going on as well. And so I think he remembered that, because he was like, let's go upstairs and talk. And this was like right after the show. And we just talked for like 2 hours. And it's funny because there's a picture of us right after that meeting. And he, I guess, digging up a lot of stuff in the past and talking about a lot of stuff in the past. He was, it was emotional for him too, but I walked out of there like, I felt great. Like, he cheered me up amazingly. And there's this picture of us, and he's kind of like looking a little emotional, and I'm like all happy. And, it's like the exact opposite of what it was before we walked in there, and it was just, the guys are on the road so much and are so busy and don't have any time to really do anything. And for him to take the time and the things that he wasn't just buttering me up. Like, the things that he said were true and were real. And I abide by a lot of the things that he said and the advice that he gave me, because he had been there before. And then the very next night, I was back there and they were about to go on stage, and he brought me over, and like, I was in the huddle. Like, there were 7 of us instead of 6. which was like, I did not feel comfortable even doing that at all, you know, but they were like, you know, and they did their ritual, wasn't a prayer, but it was whatever it is that, you know, the thing that they do, you know, putting all their hands in the circle before they go out on stage. And it's funny because that's the weekend that I completely turned a corner. I met a bunch of new friends that weekend too that were really great and that were there for me. And that's when I started to pull myself out of the muck, you know. And when I hear, you know, a lot of their songs and a lot of their music, songs like 2 by 2 and Out of Order and, you know, The Wait Around, obviously, and all those songs from that period, they really do speak to me. And life has just gotten better ever since. And so I'll never forget that. I think about that a lot. It comes up a lot in my mind when I'm faced with challenges in life these days. And so they're really great people. You know, they have every reason to be arrogant or to be, you know, have the rock star kind of vibe going on. And they're really, really close friends with each other. And that's all the difference. That's why bands like Phish are still together 35 plus years, you know, without a lineup change. I mean, you know, they had Jeff before that, but since '86, it's been the same 4 guys because they're friends. Mm-hmm. And there's other bands like, you know, the Dead, you know, sometimes they want to kill each other, you know, and Pink Floyd and Yes, I mean, they hate each other, you know. So this band, Umphrey's, is now on their 17th year with no lineup changes for a 6-piece. Which is totally unheard of. I've never heard of that. I mean, since Miro left, that's the only change, you know. And like Stasek says in Reel to Reel, you make your best music and you can improvise the best when you are getting along and friends with the people you're making music with. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely. I mean, every year that goes by, they get better and better, and they just become more and more special to me and my friends.
Mm-hmm. I feel the same way. So talk about the project that you're working on, going through the shows from the beginning and taking out the pieces and examining stuff more. Talk more about that and why you started it and what your plans are with doing this.
Yeah, the plans just keep happening. What I began doing is when my infant, well, they're not infants anymore, they're 7. But when my twin boys were infants and life was insane, and just to get out of the house for a little bit was so important. So I would walk around the neighborhood, go on long walks, and put in music. And I decided to take a band and start at the very beginning and do a deep dive and listen to their albums in order, like listen to them like twice. The first album, then the second album, mix in the live albums, make sure it's all chronological. I would take some of my favorite bands that I haven't listened to in a long time, or bands that I didn't know that well, and just by the time you were, and I would only do it when I was exercising so I could pay attention. So it would take years sometimes, but you literally live inside this band's history and then when it's over, it's like you have a completely different view and relationship of this band. And so like it took me like 5 years to do the Dead because they have so many releases. It's amazing because you live within these eras, and then I would watch videos from each era or whatever, and so now I know everything. I mean, I think I did anyway, but it had been so long. So I decided to start on Umphrey's, and I've been putting them off because first of all, I'm still seeing them, and I know the music so well, but it turns out I actually don't know the music so well because there's a lot of things I haven't listened to in a long time. So I started with Greatest Hits Volume 3 in 1998, and then listened to like 4 or 5 shows from 98, and, you know, then going sometimes 5 or 10 shows a year, plus the albums, all the way to the end. And I'm only on 2005 right now. I'm actually listening to a 3-night run in the South in the spring of 2005. The cool thing about knowing the group is that I've been texting Ryan whenever I have a question. So I'll be, you know, on top of some hill, and I'll be like, was Sweetness always inside a Slacker? You know, because it is for these 3 versions I've heard from '99. Bayless introduces it Slacker, but Sweetness is in the middle. You know, or I'll ask him about this show or that show, and he always will text me back. You know, and so then I started sending him shows that maybe he didn't remember much about. And so we've kind of, I mean, I'm the one doing the archiving and the work and stuff like that, but we're kind of doing it together. And it's, so like there'll be an interview coming out that I think you've heard part of, where me and Rob Turner and Stasic sit down and specifically talk about the early years. And that's all a result of me going back and doing this deep dive. So there's going to be several projects coming out, one of which is going to be, at least as far as we know so far, is an album of banter. They had been wanting to do it for a long time. And I started telling Joel and some other guys some of the just hilarious banter from the early days. Most of it involving Miro, who's just a riot. And, you know, there were also less people in the audience and there was more beer on stage. So really, really funny. So Kevin Browning talked to me last year, is like, you know, we've been talking about doing an album of banter. So why don't you collect it all that you think is good, and then we'll put it together. You know, and it's going to take a long time, because a good piece of banter is like 30 seconds. So it's hard to make a whole album of that, but we are going to do it. I just don't know when it's going to come out, but I've been saving the really hilarious pieces of banter. So as far as we know now, at some point in the future, there will be an Umphrey's McGee release with the best of them, the best of their banter and cutting up on stage. So that's one project that's come from this. And then Rob Turner and I have talked about doing more interview projects and stuff. So who knows what will come of it, but it's been really, really exciting and interesting and fun. And it's just one thing I take away, they were so good from the very beginning. They were ridiculous. I'm talking when it was just the four of them before Andy, like, you know, even when they were doing Phish covers and stuff like that, like they were still so tight. And it's amazing that some of their best songs they still play live were written in 97, 98. You know, like All in Time and Thin Air and 2x2 and Der Blutencat. Those are all from the very first year of Umphrey's. You know, there was never a period where they were just sloppy and finding their way, it doesn't seem like.
No. I think it's just that energy that they have and they've had from the very beginning, that connection that they've had the whole time. I think, like you said, it's about, you know, you make better music when you're with your friends. So I think that's what it is.
And I've been the period before Jake joined is just, and of course it's been ridiculously great since he joined. It is in Umphrey's without him. I mean, obviously that goes without saying. But when you go back and listen to the shows from the 90s, like 99, especially when you start getting into fall 99, summer 2000 is incredible. There's a couple of shows at Benchwarmers that are just unbelievable. And it's just Bayless on guitar. And it just shows you what a humble guy he is, because he steps back a lot. I mean, he's still one of the lead guitar players, but he really does step back a lot. Before Jake was in the band, Bayless was not a guitar player. You really have to go back and listen to those shows to really grasp how good this guy is. I mean, he is just an unbelievable guitar player. And, you know, you would think that Jake would be the one to come up with all the really evil technical sounding stuff, but Joel and Brennan were the ones writing this song. I mean, Der Blutencat and Second Self and Prowler, all of those are before Jake was even in the band. You know, so to hear that raw sound with just one guitar, it's really, really exciting. I go back and listen to it a lot, you know, just to hear that different perspective. Songs for Older Women, which I think is an incredible live album. I wish they would re-release it. It annoys me to no end that those albums are not in print. From November of 98. So they had been around less than a year, and just an incredibly stellar live album with just Brendan on guitar. That's been really exciting to go back and listen to those shows.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I feel about like early 2017. There was like a Northeast run and Jake was sick. He had the flu.
Yeah.
So he didn't do any of those shows. And
I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, my husband and I we went to the show in Rochester, and it blew me away, because you're hearing things differently, and, you know, Jake's not there, so Brendan's playing, you know, more, and it's exactly what you said. You know, after I left there, I'm like, wow, you're hearing new things and experiencing new parts of the band, and I always recommend to people to listen to those, because it's still just so phenomenal, and it's great to hear, you know, like you said, Brendan more, and then also to hear everybody else, you know, in different places, because Jake wasn't there.
Yeah, and one of the big problems from the early days, and not so much to the extent it was, but nobody could ever hear Joel. I mean, I remember seeing him in the clubs, and he was just drowned out, and he's just if you ever have a chance to catch one of his solo piano shows, I mean, you realize what an important part of the band he is. Is that, when you say keyboardist to you, that's usually not the most important member of the group, but he is just absolutely key to the sound. And so back then, to hear those shows without that second blazing guitar, you can really hear the contributions that Joel makes and how he leads the jams a lot and things like that. And as far as the guitar solos, they stick to the original structure, meaning like if Jake wasn't in the band and they're doing a song where Jake wasn't in the band originally, like Bayless takes that solo, like 2 by 2 and songs like that, and like we were talking about Second Self, and like if it's a pre-Jake song, Bayless will take the solo still to this day for the most part. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool stuff.
It is pretty cool, and I'm sure people are gonna like that little fact. They'll think about that now when they're listening to songs. They'll be like, oh.
Yeah, and those are just things that I picked up by doing this deep dive. I mean, and I can't say enough about Mike Miro. It's just, he may not be the monster fill master that Chris is. He's one of the best drummers in rock, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But the touches that he adds to the playing back then, it's just such a crucial part of why the band sounds the way they do. I mean, songs like The Fuzz, things like that, his hi-hat work on Andy's Last Beer and things like that, just very subtle touches. He's just got such grace and such a unique personal touch. I mean, it's a great compliment to say, oh, that's this guy. Like if you hear a guitar player, oh, that's Carlos Santana, I can tell. Like I can tell when it's Mike Miro. And that's even harder for a drummer, to hear a drummer and say, oh, that's him. He had his own style, his personality comes through in his playing and his humor and all of that. And, he was only in the band for 5 years, and that's why people are still talking about him. That's why the band is still talking about him. He was just a crucial part of the sound.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's everything I have. I don't know if there's anything else you want to chat about.
Well, I want to say congratulations on your podcast and just the word going around about it. And I've heard all about it and wanted to be on it. I can't believe I have to follow Justin J.W. Powell. I don't know how it's going to be done. I will say a few things about Justin. He played with Mother Vinegar for a while, and we also sat in together with Umphrey's in March of 2007 and at the same show. And I played the Immigrant Song and completely screwed up the ending because I took my earbuds off. But he lives not too far from here, and he's a great keyboard player. And so it's been cool to kind of be on the same timeline as him as this band grows. And we'll be doing. I'm going to be hooking up with Rob Turner, who does the Inside Out podcast, and we're going to be doing some Umphrey's related stuff soon that we're going to release. Fairly soon, as soon as this coronavirus thing gets done. I thought coronavirus was something that Rob got after having too many beers at a Mexican restaurant, but apparently it's much bigger than that. So
apparently it's a bigger deal than that. So right. Blame it on Rob. It's all Rob's fault.
That's right. That's right. So as soon as that cools down, we're gonna have some cool stuff coming out, and like we did some interviews in Asheville. We're gonna do some more hopefully in the future. So.
Awesome. Those Asheville shows were ridiculous. That was actually my first time in Asheville, and now those were my last Umphrey shows. So I'm super glad we went, especially because
they skipped last year, but every year the same time of the year, right around my birthday, which is great. That's I turned that into my birthday party. They play every year at the same time. I remember the first show there a few years ago was their first arena show, and now they're selling out 2 nights, so it's really, really exciting. It's cool that they set up their schedule almost like a school year. When they're going to be in a certain part of the country at a certain time of the year, so it's a little easier to plan ahead. So hopefully we'll see them there next year.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We're definitely already in for it. We loved Asheville, so that'd be cool.
Absolutely, love to see you guys.
Yeah. Well, this is really awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, Sarah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And good luck with everything, and we'll be listening and watching.
Thank you so much for your support, and I'm super grateful that you wanted to be on. So this was great. Thanks.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye.